Good morning, everybody. Dave Kellogg here. We're on the Homes Podcast, and you will see that we have a new co-host here, Khadijah Sims. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Khadijah Johnson. I am a local real estate agent with Hunt Real Estate, and then I also run my own business called Okay, Let's Talk, in which we partner with schools and after-school organizations and teach them about real estate.
Okay, Let's Talk?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we don't teach in schools, and taxes and personal finance and housing are part of it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. How long have you been doing that?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. We actually have an episode on it from last year.
We sure do.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I'm sorry, Khadijah Johnson. All right, cool. Across the table, would you care to introduce yourselves?
I'll jump right in if that's okay, because I actually had the pleasure of working with Khadijah over at Giffen Memorial Elementary School in Albany South End as a community school site coordinator, in which my role was to bring in programming that was enriching to students' lives and that they wouldn't get during the regular school day. So the rave reviews from elementary students about Khadijah's program has led to her continuing, I'm assuming, and growing her business and with Okay, Let's Talk. So
Thank you.
So you found a way to extend the school day, and the kids liked it?
Yeah. So
Holy schnickadoodle.
it
that's
works out
awesome.
well. So we do a lot of STEAM programs. So they're not just like sitting in their desk, but they're actually moving around. So they're moving their bodies around, they're moving their hands around, they're engaging within each other, and then they're learning at the same time. So it's like a slam dunk.
So STEAM is like an extension of what STEM, science, technology, English, and math. What's the A?
Arts.
Art, perfect. Right. Awesome.
So Christine Moore, but the reason I'm here today is to talk about my work with the Schenectady Foundation, Housing One Schenectady Together, which is a community change grassroots initiative.
William Rivas with Cocoa House. I love the work Khadijah's doing at Cocoa House. That's something we're looking to do, is educate our kids on home ownership, entrepreneurship, taxes, finance, and stuff like that, with and without the community education system, because we're utilizing our community organization to be able to offer those caveats. I too am here with Christine as a member of One Schenectady's HOST initiative. So we're excited to be here with you guys today.
What is HOST? Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, HOST is Housing One Schenectady Together. It came out of an initiative with the Schenectady Foundation, who during the pandemic, they hired an organization called Community Science to do a systems change research analysis of the city of Schenectady, its resources, and its leadership. And out of that came these great strategies that the Schenectady Foundation really chose to embody and bring to the community, in utilizing community members, leadership, and those most impacted to create systems change. And this is just one piece. The housing piece is just one initiative that really came out of that.
Cool.
If it's okay, about a year ago, we had a call to action from the Schenectady Foundation, open to anyone in the community who wanted to have a positive impact. We spent 3 days of conferencing, 3 different nights, around 6 hours of just volunteers coming together to talk through issues that were important to us. There were several pitches in the room towards the end, in which everyone had an opportunity to vote on which issue they would like to commit to 90 days of action. And the issue that was selected was housing. It was an issue that impacted everybody in the room. It was an issue that everyone cared about. And it was something that we all felt, whether or not we were experts in housing or had really, if we felt we had something valuable or not to offer, we recognized the value and the importance of having quality housing. So we worked for 90 days and broke off into committees and followed this community science model and framework. And we got a lot accomplished, including progress towards a landlords excellence application, where we could take a look at, pick up this model that Albany had used. We did some research in the process and pick up this model and see whether or not it would be something that could work for Schenectady, where sort of like a restaurant rating system, you could go online and have some transparency about who you're renting from and what other properties your landlord owns, And there's a bunch of little data points that we looked at, or we're continuing to look at, as what is most valuable to us to be able to understand when we look for an apartment.
I remember that on the podcast, you were doing the 90 days, and I was like, what kind of change can you expect in 90 days? Because, I mean, besides like you're taking time off to go to work, to the gym or something, 90 days is super fast. And you're talking about big systems with big money. And, I mean, it's hard for Khadijah and I, as I slap this mic around, it's hard for us to close a home in 90 days if things aren't going smooth.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, target's 45, but I hate extensions, so I put 60 and hope for the best, right?
That's it.
So 90 days is super fast. What was that, about a year ago, Will?
Yeah.
All right. Is that app or website up and running yet?
No, it's not. The great thing about this initiative has been our ability to evolve. Right?
Sure.
And so you're correct. When you're looking at 90 days to deal with a systemic issue, it's almost impossible.
It's too fast.
The good thing about it was within the 90 days, the most important thing we learned in the space was that we don't have all the answers. Sure. And we were committed to extending not only our time, but our effort. And a lot of times when you start to dig into these systemic issues, you start to see there's more of a problem and more of a problem. And sometimes what happens, and I've been a part of a lot of initiatives, is people get frustrated and you start to walk away because it's like nothing's happening.
Sure.
What happened with this initiative was every time we felt a little bit of fatigue, one of us would come up with another perspective to challenge the group and re-engage us.
That's awesome.
So instead of people walking away, one of us would kind of step in. At times it was Christine, at times it was other members who would come in and it would help us re-engage. And that's how we got to this point where it's like, you know what? Instead of us sitting in a room making these decisions and determinations, how about we eliminate that piece of the process and we focus on the conversation with those most impacted, the community, and not community leadership or us as in what we are, but the people most impacted, those who rent from the city, those who may want to be homeowners, those who don't have access to information, those living in shelters. We are making a commitment to go back to dig in specifically to speak to them, because in the midst of this wonderful 90-day process, we realize okay, maybe there's a different way to go at this. And so I credit kind of the group and the framework set by Community Science for helping us stay focused on that and not getting into the point being like, okay, well, we decided this is what it is. No, we adjusted.
Right.
I think so. I find there are two types of people. The Play-Doh people that no matter how much energy you put in, they absorb it and it disappears. And I find that very draining. And then you have the Jell-O where you give them energy, you give a boost, and they give it right back, and then it's back and forth, and all of a sudden now you've got new life and you can go on forever. So it's really cool that as you find yourself your energy draining, you find a new focus to kind of give you that reinvigoration, because because most processes by the time you get to the end you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I took that much time for this, but every now and then you step in, you have a good story or whatnot, it goes really, it can be altering to the process and to your energy level. I want to give a 10-second story. It's my favorite real estate story so far. I'm under contract for a qualified income house up in Amsterdam for a client. She said, look, Dave, everyone said no to me, can't get a loan. We found a way to get her a loan. Lisa Atkins from Arrow Bank, I'm going to call her out because she's a friend of the podcast here, as she found a way to get her approved. And when I finally was able to show her the house, she parked and ran to me. And the whole time we were in the house, she was with her 2 or 3 kids. They say, Mom, you deserve this. And I'm dying right now. It made me feel good. Mm-hmm. Right. And we're working a lot with AIK, MLB, LLC, the housing initiative, and the Summit Street properties. And I can't wait to have more stories like that when we get to the closing table. Mom, Dad, you deserve this, things like that. That's my energy reverb that I cannot wait to get more of. So I appreciate when you are running low on energy, you find that the spark that re-engages, that I think finding that is important as starting it.
Yeah, and I think that's really a credit to Community Science and Schenectady Foundation for putting together this initiative and giving us a framework to do just that. because part of the rules of engagement in this thing that we signed up for is there's no one voice that dominates the space. Like, we have guiding principles that we all signed up to follow through with. So it makes it very easy when your energy's low or we feel things aren't moving around for someone else to come in with a different perspective and say, well, what about this? And instead of people getting in their egos about, well, we're doing this and we're focused on that, no, we all just kind of adjust and say, you know what, we didn't think about that. Because at the end of the day, it's not about us that are sitting in this room having a discussion. It's about the people we serve. And that guiding principle, that North Star, has been the thing that's really shaped and moved this thing along.
So let's talk about what the community is looking for. You want to give me a couple key points on what, because we talk, we represent a lot of home buyers. I mean, that's our bread and butter, right? So if we're going to represent a landlord, let's talk about what the tenants find the most important, for the house, for the location, for the yard, for whatever it is, because we would be able to say, hey, we just spoke with some community leaders that represent and have the best interests of tenants on hand. What they find really helpful is a washer and dryer unit or whatnot. So can you expound on some of those best kept secrets maybe?
I can attempt to, or at least explain how we can work on getting that information to be more available to the folks who need to hear it. So when we had the Let's Talk the State of Housing in Schenectady, while we had elected officials, we had organizational leaders, but we also had residents. And I will add that this covered Schenectady County, so that myself and Will, even though we may be affiliated with an organization or have a specific role, we shared our own housing journey in that space as well. So the model of the structure of the forum that we had, or the round table, was essentially designed so that there was equal and shared power in this space, and that no one voice was stronger than another. So everyone was asked the same 3 questions in each round. And the first question asked, what is your housing journey? And as I mentioned, everybody, no matter who you were, what position you were representing, maybe that brought you there to the room that day, you had your own housing journey. So we were able to connect as human beings in that space. So in those connections, in my group, there were about 5 or 6 of us in the group. I had a diverse group of people with different housing experiences, from homelessness or unhoused, experiences of losing family members in home, and we talked a lot about the mental health struggles that come along with the fear of losing housing. We talked about public housing, Section 8 programs, First Home Buyers Club. We also talked about an older population who doesn't have the opportunity to save for home ownership because the cost of living's increased. We talked about concerns regarding retaliation for renters if they were to make complaints about issues in the apartments. We talked about safety of where we live, and some of our, especially in our unhoused shelters, that oftentimes there's a concern regarding safety and well-being, which again, your unstable housing and mental health. We talked about graduation rates of our students in the district and how that relates to their housing situation and housing stability. So I think we're still talking maybe not about what the healthy home looks like what are our desires, our wants, and our needs, or our wants, but more what are our needs at this point as a community as a whole. We talked about home repairs as another need in the community, and that just, as a new home buyer, we may be excited and emotionally attached to, getting that home and having a stable place to live and getting through the process. But we may not be prepared for what's to come in terms of needing a new roof, or if there's an increase in our taxes because of our property value increase. So all of these topics were discussed in this very broad session with the hope of taking what we've heard, categorizing it, and addressing those particular issues with the experts who are in the room, who are listening, who have solutions, and can support in continuing the dialogue with everyone. So I think we're still operating on that needs base and what does our housing look like. But with this host initiative, the goal is to get people to get the resources and services they need, or the information that they need, the education that they need. And we're just going through the listening process and making sure that Schenectady has those resources.
Yeah, so the great thing about it was, each table, we were offered the same question, but everybody's responses were different based on, where they came from. So at my table, some of the things that came out, the concerns were median household income in the city being $54,000 and in the county being $75,000. So when we're talking about home ownership, we're talking about individuals who, for a lot of them, are struggling really even to pay rent. So how do you go from renting to home ownership if you're only making the same dollar? So that was one of the things that came across on our table. We had one individual who actually just recently finished paying on his home. I think he said he paid like $250,000 on his home, and he was happy, paid his home off, and then he turned around and the roof went bad, so now he needs a new roof. And it's like, where do I get more money for a roof? And I just paid, the rest of the money that I had for this house. There was a person at our table who lives downtown, and what they said was, the apartments downtown are nice, they're creating all this housing, but there's no parking. So like, you have all these apartments downtown, everyday people who already live in the city being priced out because of the income rates. So a 1-bedroom downtown is like $1,800, and people who live in the city, who have generally grown up in the city of Schenectady and have seen the growth in downtown, can't take part in the growth because they can't afford to live downtown. One of the things that they did like was the frequent access to local businesses and mom and pop shops. That is a very good thing. I've lived in Schenectady the majority of my life, so when you're seeing people from the city build businesses and you have access to them, that's a good feeling. But again, growing up, let's say in Hamilton Hill, and you see all the money invested in downtown, and you want to be a part of that, if you're not working 2 or 3 jobs, you cannot really afford to move into those spaces. And the thing that was talked about at our one of the things that was talked about at our table, and it was really important, was contracts. So when we talk about housing and we talking about housing complexes, we're talking about these $100 million projects. We're not talking about equity going into the community because the contracts aren't done by the people who live in the city. They're usually given to people in Syracuse and Buffalo who bring their own workers. Yes, they will stay in hotels locally and they'll spend their money locally. But what about the individuals who grew up here who don't have access to that level of equity? The people who are looking for jobs or looking for opportunities, I think, and it's part of what was great about this conversation, like our city would be in a great space to give some of those contracts to local contractors, returning some of that equity back into the community. That was just a piece of what we was tapping on to. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say, Khadijah was there and sat at a table, so
Yeah.
I would love to hear her experience.
Yeah, I do have to say, it was a fantastic experience being there. I love the round tables. I love having the same questions as every other table, but hearing a different answer. So I think the layout of the meeting was fantastic. I honestly did not want it to be over. I was like, wait, it's been 2 hours already? We can't add on another hour. So one of the things that stuck out at my table is that there was, I believe, 2 people that lived in downtown Schenectady, and they shared the same answer, which was that the apartments that are being built in downtown Schenectady, it's not enough bedrooms in the apartment for a certain size family, right? A lot of the bedrooms are just being built, exactly, or 1 to 2 bedrooms. So they're like, well, what about the people who have families of 3, of 4, or 5? Where are those apartments being built, right? So that was the main concern, the number one topic at my table. And I I agree with that. And I feel like that is something that's happening all over the capital region, right? Schenectady, Troy, Waterville. I own property in Waterville, and it's the same thing, right? You see a lot of 2 and 3 bedrooms, which is great. But, we're not just talking about, let's just say, quote unquote, a mom or 2 parents and 2 kids. Like, there's a lot of generational, family living that's going on where grandparents are not living in the house, or maybe auntie and uncle are staying in the house, or whatever the case may be. And it's like, we need that 4-bedroom, that 5-bedroom apartment, and there's none that's being built. So I feel like that's definitely something that should also be entered into the conversation.
It's money. It's all money. That's where it comes down to. Like, you can make on a 2 1-bedrooms, you're $2,000 a piece, as Will just said. On a 4-bedroom, you're going to be $3,000. So you threw $1,000 away.
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter if once or twice, but for 50 years, that's a lot. That's $600K because you did 2 bedrooms, 2 1s instead of 1 4.
Yeah.
I do think I absolutely agree that there's a couple changes that I'd love to see Schenectady do. One, we talked about parking. Chickens and trolleys is the answer. More chickens, more trolleys.
I love that. You said that the last time.
I'm going to keep saying it, Will. I'm a goof.
I'm on board with chickens and trolleys.
I'm a 100% pro making money, but not at the expense of everyone else. And I'm like a Monopoly playing hippie, right? I want everyone to be happy and everyone have a chance. And I see what the pure chase of the dollar goes. I mean, if you have 1 and 2 bedrooms, let's be honest, you're not going to get a family. If you don't have a family in there and they're not flushing stuffies down the toilets, it means your management's lower. If you, it's easier to be a landlord without kids or if you're picking like a 20 to 40 year range of young professionals, that's where all the money is. But it's unfair to the world to only make that. And so speaking of where one is, I've got a great one at 633 Lang Street. That's a 4-bedroom with an office. Could be a 5-bedroom.
Yeah, nice.
But to Will's point, I want to see more mom and pops. Like, I don't want to see only those big, identifiable labels on a coffee cup or, some yellow arcs. I'm coming to America. I love them. We don't have the arches. We have the arcs.
We have the arcs.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to name drop, but I want to see more mom and pop shops. But it's tough sometimes to go through zoning and say, look, I want to do this with a property I already own. Well, it's a self-created hardship. I get why they do that, but how do you get past that? There should be a process to get past that. Yeah, I don't know. These are tough, big questions, and it's not like it's a quick wave of the hand. Like, who's going to knock down a building and put parking up for free? Right. Because there's no money in parking.
Right.
So
and I think that's the good thing about what we're focused on is we want to be intentional about having the tough conversations and getting the tough answers, because I think that's the only way we create change. So when we committed, I'll speak for myself, when I committed to being a part of this system change work, that's what I committed myself to. Having the tough conversations, getting the tough answers, and then being a part of the change, because I believe Schenectady has the ability to do it. And I say that because I've lived here my entire life. There are like 200 nonprofits in a 20-mile radius. We have great work being done in the city. I remember when downtown was the place you didn't go. It was the dangerous spot in the city. It was the area in the city that didn't feel safe. So to see all the work done and to see the improvements, it shows that if an intention is created, it can be done. But then there lies the question. Right. The same as with those 1 and 2 apartments being built downtown is intention. And I feel like that's where we have to be, where we got to get to.
Yeah, that's where you have to use legislation, because you can't legislate morality, but you can legislate profit. Right. It's great to see big things come in. Like, let's use Redburn in Troy, right? It's great to see these big buildings go, but you might have 100 units, but you have 10,000 2-families. The power is in the people still. I mean, you may not be able to pay for a lobbyist, and you may not have the time and energy to go after every grant in the world, but there's still a ton of power in these small, everyday, often available at a reasonable price. Less so now, maybe. But there's a lot of power in picking up a 2-family and Khadijah and I are specialists in helping people figure out how to do it. And I think every story, like one of my favorite shows is Bob's Burgers. You know, they work in the restaurant as a family together. They own the house, and you know, in my mind, that's like the entrepreneurial American dream, right? It's you have the entrepreneurial spirit and the home that's safe for the family, right? So I would love to see more diversification of mom and pop shops, and just open up the floodgates and be like, look, guys, for the next year, you know, we'll try it as an experiment. We'll take away that create a hardship rule for 6 months or whatever. And if you come up with a business plan and you say it makes sense and we poll the neighbors, we'll say yes. I'd love to see that just to try it.
Yeah, I think that would be an amazing idea.
Mm-hmm. We were talking a little bit about legislation, right? And I believe that the host initiative is intended to get the voice of the people to feel as though they have a space when it comes to planning and development with the city, to be actively engaged in the city's comprehensive planning, to have additional conversations around housing, and just to empower people to really feel as though they have a space and a voice and have the ability to impact change in their community. I also want to highlight from the conversations that we spoke about opportunities and state funding for innovative ways to improve housing in Schenectady. Some of the ideas, and Schenectady being a very home to very innovative people, it would be wonderful if Schenectady continued to live that legacy when it comes to the issues of housing. But we talked about manufactured homes. I also serve as on the board of directors for Habitat for Humanity, and our projects, 3 of the houses that are being built are going to be manufactured homes, and the company that we're using is not far from here. But someone had suggested, what if Schenectady was manufacturing homes? And what if our schools were educating property managers and landlords on how to be good landlords? Because one of the recurring themes that we were hearing was the relationships between our tenants and our landlords are very divided and very fear-based, and we really need to nurture and work on ways to improve communication so that we're working on win-win solutions. And we've engaged with Schenectady Landlords Incorporating Change, or SLIC is the acronym. And they carry a strong voice and have a strong perspective, but there's also others that we don't have representation of. For example, in the beginning of this project, one of my responsibilities was to, or maybe where I found that it wasn't a responsibility, my personal responsibility to the project was I had a connection in Albany with the United Tenants Association. And we reached out to them. They came and they spoke to our group. They indicated that they serve Schenectady. However, they don't have the capacity to truly serve Schenectady. So while they're capital region based, they don't have the manpower behind it or the people power behind it to advertise or serve. However, they did do some research and found that, the year prior they had done 44 calls for Schenectady that they were able to serve. And there's a range of service providers. But what we're often hearing, and it speaks to as well with like Habitat and other city programs, is that the people who live here have a tendency to just be surviving or getting by and aren't necessarily hearing or learning about the opportunities that are available. And just in preparing for this podcast, I was able to listen to a few episodes, and I found them very helpful. And I said, wow, these are the people that, I should be having conversations with. This is where some of the education is coming from. So I want to applaud the podcast because you're doing a great job at providing education. But why did it take me till, this week and this opportunity to access it? I've lived in Schenectady for 20 years. I don't know how city properties are dealt with, or if there's, if I had a little bit of money, is there an opportunity for me to become a landlord and invest? So
We should talk.
Well, so these are like the conversations that as we're sitting in those groups, and those people are coming from all their different journeys, and that now I know. So if I hear from someone in whatever community we're working in that this is the issue, or this is a topic, we now have the resources and the ecosystem and the communication and transparency to really develop ourselves. And I think too, when we look at the waiting list, sometimes there are people from outside our community who hear about what we have to offer before we hear about what we are offering. So I think part of the communication needs to be really to educate the people who live here about how to thrive here, rather than bringing in new folks.
Well, and I think that's really been, that's the discussion that hasn't been had yet, right? And it's how information is given out to people, right? So we have a saying at our program that we teach the youth, and that is, knowledge is power. Applied knowledge is power, because we have access to information, but everybody doesn't know how to use it and apply it in real time. Because for a lot of people, we can show you this process. I have been blessed in the last year and a half to purchase my childhood home, rehab it, turn it to a teen center, and I basically own the entire block that I grew up on right now under Cocoa House.
Congrats.
Everything except for one property. And I say that not as a celebration, but more or less as a learning tool in which, now that I've gone through the experience, I can show others how to do it. Mm-hmm. But you also know what I realized? That doesn't mean people trust the process just because I can tell them.
100%.
Because in there comes the lack of hope. In our communities, a lot of time what happens is people see a version of success, and because it doesn't seem or feel attainable, even if you walk somebody through the entire process, they can still not feel comfortable, and because it still doesn't feel believable. Mm-hmm. So trying to find ways to reinstill hope into the people is key, because there are podcasts. Maurice is phenomenal with the homes program in the city. Mm-hmm. Schenectady has a ton of resources. There are a ton of, like I said, there's 200 nonprofits in a 20-mile radius. Even with all that access, there are still some people who are choosing not to follow through the process because they don't believe it's for them. And that goes back to like looking at that median household number. So when you have people who are living off social services, that median household number doesn't even matter, because all your housing and your resources are tied into your ability to stay in poverty. And the moment you make a percentage, a penny over this algorithm, this poverty line, you now lose access to your services. And for a single mother who's raising her kids and doing the best she can, trying to establish this home situation creates a fear-based approach, because now you feel like, but if this doesn't work, then I lose everything I have to provide for my kids.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for people, because I think people really want to.
Yeah.
But there's a feeling that it's almost not attainable, even when we show them all the resources are matchable. That's the thing I love about Schenectady.
Yeah, so I think you guys are definitely speaking my language, and that is exactly the reason why I created the youth business, because there was a time where I was speaking to multiple first-time home buyers, and there were many challenges, right? I would speak to one, they were like, oh, my credit's too low. That's great. No worries. I got a credit repair person. I got this, I got you. But they still wouldn't take the next step. Another person, it was, well, I don't have any money. And it's like, I got you. We got grants. We got this. But they still wouldn't take the next step. So there was a point in it was really 2 years ago. There was a point where I was speaking to multiple first-time home buyers, and they would come to me with a reason of why they couldn't move forward with buying a house. And it did not matter how many solutions I had for them. They still believed that it wasn't the thing for them. It wasn't possible for them. And I had to sit down and be like, okay, where is this coming from? Where is this stemming from? And then I was like, okay, well, maybe maybe I can transform this into speaking with the youth. If I can get the youth to understand that it is achievable, that it's something that they can do, and maybe not only do they have the knowledge for themselves, but maybe they're going home at the dinner table or whatever the case may be, and they're having the conversations with their parents. Maybe that will hopefully put their parents in the right direction also. So I love this.
And what we found really in these discussions and just being a part of this, so like I have Cocoa House, but I've been a director of a shelter for the last 17 years. I oversee a parole contract. And what we found is like generational poverty equals its lack of education, school to prison pipeline, it's a criminal justice system, it's a social welfare system, it's food apartheid, it's broken homes, it's lack of financial literacy. Like this is what was sold to most people as the American dream. So it doesn't feel achievable. Mm-hmm. So when you take in consideration all these systems, even when you have all these solutions in place, there are still people, because of systemic oppression and the way people have been educated and treated, that still don't believe it's achievable.
Right.
Doesn't mean that we stop trying to get them there.
Oh, yeah.
We just, once we understand the nature of the people we're working with, then we understand that sometimes you got to go a little bit above and beyond, because it is achievable and it is possible.
Yes.
We just got to be creative in our solutions.
Measure, monitor, and adjust. That's what I use.
Cool. So, you know where most people choke to death in a restaurant? Is the bathroom, because they're too embarrassed to get help. So I want to bring this out. In order to ask for help, you have to then also emotionally say, I need help. Yeah. And I don't know how to come over distrust. I can't. You know, I don't know how. You can show examples, you can be the example, you can bring up your last 12 houses on your Zillow profile and show, look, I mean, this person, we got a $10,000 TUI grant. This one we did $9,000 through BCNI. These two people, I can tell the story about, Mom, you deserve this. But I don't know how to get people out of the seats, right? And I honestly think for me, it's a numbers game. It's just reach out to as many as possible, and when they put the hand up, just go to town, right? And you know, I'm reminded of that story about the starfish on the beach. You can't get them all, but it mattered to the ones you helped. So I think there's no perfect solution, guys, but I'm really encouraged by, you know, the outreach to the community and finding out what's important. And I'm all for holding landlords accountable in private and in public with the app coming out. But I really think that it's coming down to the dining room table conversation that Khadijah just put out there. It's, hey, if I'm going to do what I've seen, my dad told me not to be a carpenter, and I do a lot of carpentry stuff, you know, because that's what I grew up knowing. And if I grew up knowing that this is how the system wants me to play and I'm stuck here, I get it. But I really am encouraged by, you know, reaching out to kids and saying, this is a good path, and, you know, if you show up and you figure this out, you know, it's open to you. So it's really saddening to know the state of affairs, but it's really encouraging to see the efforts put out there.
So at our meeting, we did talk about the good cause eviction in Schenectady. Do you guys want to expand on that?
I do not. I know it was spoken about last night on the city council meeting, and I know it's been a topic where specifically SLIC and tenants have maybe disagreed, and it's been a topic of debate. I am not by any means a housing expert, and so my position in this, and I think as one Schenectady as host, is to be able to listen and to elevate voices to advocate for themselves in spaces and places. So I'm not familiar enough with it, but I am definitely in support of providing the space for conversations for people to have together and to be open to both sides. Anytime there's a policy, there are unintended consequences. We all have blind spots, and Host Initiative is supposed to open up those blind spots so that people can see both sides of the story and can have constructive dialogue around policies that impact people's lives.
My name is William Rivas, and I want all the smoke. I believe in accountability and transparency in all things, because I believe that is how we create change. So when we talk about systems change as a whole, something else that came out of our group was, it's very interesting that the redlining districts that were set in the city of Schenectady are the same ones exactly where poverty is today. So when I take that into consideration, the context of that, right, I say to myself, okay, what can we do differently? So whatever has to happen, whether that's education, educating the youth, having these conversations at the dinner tables, holding landlords more accountable to a level of transparency, whatever we have to do, that's what we have to do, because I believe everybody deserves to have the same opportunity. What was great about our conversation was there were people in the space from the community who are renters who didn't look like me. So in a lot of spaces there are, depending on the community you're speaking about, right? But to hear different people, Rotterdam, Niskayou, and Guilderland, all have the very same concerns in regards to equity and opportunity, regardless of race, I think speaks volumes about our need to create change. I'm leave it at that.
I love it. That's a great point.
Are you looking at me, Khadijah, because you want me to speak about the cause of evictions? Because I'm a big fan of property rights as defended by the Constitution.
Yeah.
But I also think that if a ready, willing, and able adult in good mind and body enters into a contract, both sides should be held to that contract. If you're not ready to enter into a contract, don't sign. Right? I don't think so. I'm kind of saying that and brushing it off. I think there are great tenants, and I think there are great landlords, and I think there's horrible examples of both.
Absolutely.
And what I want to avoid talking about is the horrible examples of both here today.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I could show you pictures of people pooping all over the kitchen table, and I could tell you landlords that have great homes that get totally wrecked. Right? So I don't want to jump into that, but I appreciate you bringing it up because it's a great topic of conversation. I believe that's being voted on July 14th here in the city.
But I think that that's great that people can come together and have those discussions.
Yes.
I mean, when it comes to transparent dialogues, we have to, are there perfect tenants? No. I mean, there's people, and I think a lot of times that's the thing that gets taken out of context is
Right.
people,
One of my favorite tenants is someone who pays but doesn't live there because they live with a boyfriend or girlfriend. You can't ask for better.
I mean, that would make sense.
They put the heat at 72 and they're not there. But that's what you want but you want the exact opposite from a good
Yes.
landlord. You want when you call, someone answers. You have a concern, it's addressed. You're dealt with professionally and politely. I think humanism and humanity at its finest is a good communication with respect from both sides. And
Yeah.
I think that crosses all color and age and nationalities and bounds and language and all the other things you can think about. I think everyone should be and can be treated like a person. They can do the same to others around them.
I'm going to put a plug in for next Tuesday evening from 6 to 7. There is Schenectady Foundation's host is having a Zoom call. And the structure is to spend the first half hour or so from 6 to 6:30 discussing the Landlord Excellence app or whatever it's choose to be called again. This is
I think we were looking at lease, which I was like, okay.
it's an acronym. We love acronyms, if you can't tell. So LEASE stands for Landlords Excellence Application Schenectady. I'm not even sure what the S is.
I'm not going to act like I know.
But that's okay. I think. But what's interesting about it is the opportunity for both sides to talk about and weigh what's most important to them in terms of having a quality place to live. So we are bringing everyone or giving everyone the opportunity to come to the table and to share what's most important, so that when we create the formula, the algorithm that tells you how many stars you get as a landlord, that it's based on the most important information. So whether it's police records, it's code enforcement calls, it's number of properties. So being able to take a look at how that algorithm is created and to be a part of the process in creating it so that it's a valuable tool for you. We did do a survey last year, and out of the results showed that people would be interested in having something like this. But it's not, the city saying this is how we're going to do it. It's the community, the tenants, the landlords coming together and saying, this is how we're going to work on it together so that it's an effective tool, so that it does uplift quality landlords and gives them, the opportunity to shine and be acknowledged. We talked about having recognitions for good landlords above the application. And also, incorporating what do they have their certificate of occupancy or their rental certificate, and do they have they taken a course? Could that be a way to bolster a landlord's score? Mm-hmm. So these ideas are coming from people who live here, and so we are, I guess, ahead of what Albany has, and whether or not Albany was able, uses it. If it's helpful for residents when they're going and looking for an apartment. But we're able to take that model and then build upon it to make it so that it is something that people can have as a resource. And in the process, we're including the organizations so that they have access to this as well when they're going to work with someone who's looking for housing.
Speaking of access, where do I find that Zoom link?
I would go to the Schenectady Foundation website and
under one Schenectady tab. They have a one Schenectady tab, so under there you should be able to.
Well, do you have your email there with you, Will? Do you want to give Elizabeth's email and she can send out the Zoom link as well? I think it's Elizabeth Walsh is the equity and engagement coach with
Walsh
the foundation.
at SchenectadyFoundation.org. Sorry.
Zeb, can we put that up if provided? Perfect. Zeb's the
and we'll
best.
send you the link so you guys can add it if you would like.
So I think that's kind of where I want to end. I want to end on a call to action. I want to end on some of the topics we talked about. We talked about we have a great website, or we have a great podcast. Made me feel good. Thank you, Christine. But no one watches it, right? So if any of this interests you, share it with somebody. Send a YouTube link to the playlist. That's how I've done it before. If you're a tenant or a landlord, jump on the Zoom call here next Tuesday, I believe you said, from 6 to 7.
Yes, and you don't just have to be a tenant or a landlord. You can be an organization, and we would love to. So the goal is, with this Zoom call, is to have it more regularly so the conversation just doesn't stop. Yeah. Because housing is an issue that's going to happen. It's going to continue to be a living, breathing issue of importance for everyone. And so as housing situation evolves, people need to continue to be a part of the conversation. So the Zoom structure, while it may lend itself to more organizations having conversations, and maybe less so getting to the communities whose voices, the idea is to do both. But to have the ecosystems and the resources available so that we can continue to educate each other and work collectively to solve some of these issues. So the hope is not that Christine continues to host the Zoom meetings on housing, but that perhaps an organization steps up and supports, and it's a more regular conversation, and we can share out what this podcast is educating people on. I mean, as part of the education, you've had lots of folks on, and we can work together to make sure that the word is getting out in these different spaces. So
cool. So this is episode 32, guys. There's a lot of conversations we've had, and maybe some won't matter to you, and some you'll find boring or not exciting at all, but there's a lot of effort and information here that we've had a chance to talk about and share. So if you have any questions, or want to ask a question or listen or post something in the future about, hey, why don't we talk about this? This is supposed to be a conversation, and I'd love to hear more from the audience out there. So if you can, that's where I'm going to call to action here, guys. If you can share this and hopefully find some value, or share it to someone who will, I mean, let's have these conversations be heard. And I think that wraps it up for me. Was there any last thoughts anybody want to throw in? Cool.
Thank
you
you.
guys. Thank you
Thanks
very
for
much for
having
being
us.
here.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having us.